All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, you are listening to the cleverly titled Phil Ferguson Show. Very special episode, something we haven't done exactly like this before. I've had on musical artists before, but we're going to do the whole show with a musical artist, and his name is Ralph Covert. How are you, sir?
Hey, Phil, I'm doing great.
I am delighted to have you, and of course, later on, we will talk about the beginnings of your music and the group that you formed, the Bad Examples, and maybe some fun stuff with that and some music samples from that. But some of that content can be a little more mature for one of your other big audiences. And that is somehow you started making children's music. And we're going to talk about that and play a couple sample songs. And then
Fantastic.
I'll give a nice clear warning for the parents and the children that we are ending the child, the young adult, the kid-friendly section, and we'll go into some more adult-themed songs. So I want to make sure that everyone has a chance with their kids to listen to this beginning part and enjoy some of their favorite Ralph songs. And it's Ralph's World, right?
Yeah, Ralph's World is the kids' music, and then I do non-kids music, both as the Bad Examples and as Ralph Covert. And again, that's not the non-kid stuff isn't any kind of crazy radical stuff, but I think it's a good, fair warning.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that parents knew when we get to that point, if they were concerned with adult themes, we, be advised. But for now, we're going to kind of keep it kid-friendly, very kid-friendly. And Ralph's World, walk me through how that got started. How does a rock and roll musician end up making an album for kids?
In the mid-'90s, after my daughter Fiona had been born, I was touring a little bit less so I could spend time with her. There's a gal named Jackie Russell, who's the head of the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago. She's the head of their kind of mom and tots program called Wiggle Worms. And she called me up one day and said, hey, would you teach, maybe Saturday mornings come in and do some Wiggle Worms classes? I said, I'm not really interested. Not your kindergarten guy. She said, you can bring your daughter, meet other parents. I'm going to pay you basically to have play days and play music with other parents. I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah, you said pay. That sounds nice.
Yeah, pay me to have play days with. So I really loved it. And it kind of, even after Fiona outgrew it, I continued to do it just because I was really enjoying, making music and parents and kids. And one of the kids that I had in my class was the son of Jim Powers, who's the head of Minty Fresh Records, a hip kind of Chicago boutique record label. And he said, man, do you ever think of doing a kids record? I'm like, kind of the same way that when Jackie approached me. I said, not really interested. I said, I would maybe be interested in making a great album that kids like. He goes, oh my God, you've cracked the code. So that's what we did. We put out the first Ralph's World record, and we kind of approached. I asked that we approach both the recording and the promotion not as if it was a kids record, but because his strength was in being an indie label, my strength was being an indie band. I said, let's tackle this exactly the way we've tackled everything we've both done. We don't need to pretend to be a kids artist. Let's just be a kids artist, but do it with the skill set and the tools that we've always used.
Right.
And that's what we did. And nobody had ever done that. And all of a sudden, kind of it created this whole new genre of hip kids music that parents could love, that wasn't being, wasn't dumbed down.
Yeah.
And it kind of coincidentally, just as I had my child, a lot of Bad Examples fans who had grown up, and a lot of them had met their spouse or dated their spouse going to Bad Example shows, now had kids.
Well,
so the early success of it really
it's funny because I was just going to segue into that. My wife met you very early on in your career, and she says hi, by the
Yeah.
way. Her name is Robin Ferguson, for the listeners,
Yes.
and I know you know her. She claims to have been present both nights for the recording of Cheap Beer Nights. Cheap Beer... Oh, my God, what's the
Cheap
name?
Beer Night.
Yeah, Cheap Beer Night.
Cheap Beer Night,
Didn't
yeah.
sound right
Third
for some
album.
reason. That is the live album from way back when, and she introduced me to you and the band shortly thereafter, and I can tell you stories when we're not in the kids section about some things that happened, and I'm sure you can too. But before we get too crazy, I want to play one of the songs, and I am using my privilege as the host to pick songs that I want to play. And this,
That's great.
This is a song that I actually loved as an adult, and it's exactly like you said. We actually took our kids when they were like 5 and 6 to see your shows, and this is one of my favorite songs, which became one of theirs. And so, listeners, I'm warning you, this first sample may be inappropriate volume because I'm playing off multiple computers. But Ralph, if you will indulge me here, we're going to listen to this song for a few seconds.
Newspapers wrote him up, now his name's on everybody's lips. Mrs. Culpepper's dog's a big band enthusiast. He's a pedigree with the minor key. He's a canine with a C-sharp 9. Sammy the dog has learned to play trombone. He starts blowing at midnight, wakes up the whole neighborhood. He's worse than a cat bite, but no one cares cause he sounds so good. He won't fetch a stick or lick your hand. He loves Spike Jones and Dixieland. Sammy the dog has learned to play trombone.
And of course, it just goes on and on from there. And it's exactly what you were talking about, where it is regular, just music that's, got lyrics and a nice beat. And it's changed a little from the adult version of that song, but wonderful, wonderful song. Always been one of my favorites, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I was one of those annoying people that would always yell out Sammy when you were playing concerts.
Awesome.
And I've got another one here that's a much more straight up, kind of really just a kid's song. And by the way, you have more than one Ralph's World album now, right?
Oh, I think there's 12 or 13.
Well, here's another classic, which I've actually seen you perform with the full band, which is also a nice treat. And this is Happy Lemons. So enjoy this one.
Oh.
Smiling faces, happiness is a glass of lemonade. Happy lemons for happy days. Happy people with smiling faces. Happiness is a glass of lemonade. Lemonade in the shade. Everyone loves lemonade. Happy lemons for happy days.
All right, we get the feel for that. And of course, like I said, my apologies for not making that sound right, but I'm sure we get the idea. And this song is a little extra special, if I recall correctly, because you had help writing it.
Yes, it's my daughter Fiona. When she was 5 or 6, we had moved apartments, and we had one of those wardrobe boxes. The kind of the moving boxes that you can hang your clothes in.
Sure.
Well, she flipped down one side and said, "Look, Dad, it's like a lemonade stand." So then she wanted to paint it. So we had some yellow house paint, so we painted it bright yellow. She said, "Dad, it needs a name." I'm like, "Okay, what's its name?" She said, "Its name is the Happy Lemon." I said, "That's a good name." And then, of course, because she had grown up in my house, the next thing out of her mouth was, "Dad, it needs a song." And, I said, "Okay, so how does the song go?" She's like, "Well, what?" I'm like, "How does the song go?" So she kind of thought about it, and she said, happy lemons for happy days, happy people, smiling faces, happiness is a glass of lemonade, something like that. And I realized that her little melody, her little thing she'd made up, dovetailed perfectly with a song that I had written as a kid about the same age, which is the lemonade in the shade. Everyone loves lemonade. That was the chorus to a song that I had written as a child.
Wow.
And I really smooshed the two pieces together and edited out, the 30 years in between. We had a co-write.
Now, she has her own albums out now. Is that correct?
Yeah, she's in L.A. She's making recordings and videos and playing shows and working hard at being in the industry. She's actually there's going to be a pretty neat show that should be after still when this podcast comes out. September 8th in Glen Ellen. She is playing, and the Bad Examples are playing. Which will be actually opening for the Bad Examples at the Glen Ellen Backyard Barbecue.
Oh, very nice.
Evening of September 8th. So that's going to be pretty neat.
Excellent. Well, I have at least one more kid-friendly song. So let's see. Actually, this one is...
I'm curious. This is fun.
Yeah. What, should I surprise you?
Sure.
Okay, hang on.
Why don't you tell me? Okay, go for it.
Let me surprise you. Let me make sure my sound is up this time, because that'll be less editing for Phil later. So let's give this a shot.
I wanna go surfing in my imagination, because I won't get to go on my vacation. I come home from school in the afternoon, I'm gonna hit the beach in my bedroom, surfing in my imagination.
All right, that's kind of how that goes. And I picked that at my wife's request because that was one of our kids' favorite songs when they were younger, much younger. So many years. How did this all happen? But they would actually take cushions off the couches and throw them on the floor and pretend like they were surfing.
Oh, God, that's great.
I know, isn't it? Isn't it amazing? And like I said, we went to the shows, at least a couple of them live, which was a kind of a bizarre experience to see, a rock and roll artist up on stage, but still doing rock and roll, but, specifically for kids. So like you said, it's that really nice mix. And I'm kind of hard pressed to think of anyone else who's really doing what you're doing. So I think it fills a nice niche where it's not really dumbed down music. It's good songs with good music, and it just happens to be kid friendly and packaged up on a CD for kids.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's what you went for, and I got it. Yay! How about that?
Nicely done.
I've got one.
There's a reason you do this.
Yeah. I've got one more surprise. I've got to do this on a different computer, so we're really, really gonna try the edge here. I hope this is just this volume.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah. You're gonna really love this one here. Let's see if I can do this.
Do the potty dance. Do the potty dance. Right side across, left side across. Step, step, toes, waist, celebrate. Right side across, left side across. Step, step, toes, waist, celebrate. Do the potty dance. I'm a big kid now.
All right, so do the potty dance. What is this? What is this? Was this a sellout here? What happened?
Sure.
Why not?
Why not? Huggies and some advertising agencies called up and said, did I want to do this? I guess there's a couple pieces that were really interesting. One was I didn't want it to be just a commercial type thing. I wanted it to be something that actually had some function and social value.
Yeah.
They had done a potty dance the year before, and they had this hip-hop artist kind of doing this. He took the direction of, like holding his crotch and trying to not pee his pants, and it was really embarrassing. I found it really missed the point. And so what I said to the folks at Kimberly-Clark was, and then the folks at the advertising agency, I said, I want to do something that actually, as a parent, I would want to have my child experience. So what we did is, Rita, my wife and I, she helped me come up with a dance where the kids crossed their legs, but then it was an element of celebration. So they crossed their legs, then they walked, and then they did this little dance where they kind of went toes, knees up and celebrate. And so the idea was both communicating that the child has to go to the bathroom, but then also making something where it was there's a positive reinforcement to it, and the dance kind of reinforced that, and the dance was built into the lyrics of the song.
I love it.
So, okay, so that's what we did, and they were great. They were very supportive of it. At the time, apparently, when it was released, they did a kind of cross-platform marketing with TV and internet and website. At the time, it was considered the most cutting-edge, multi-platform ad campaign that had ever been done. And one of the interesting things that sort of struck me was, I would have these experiences where, like, I was at a Ralph's World Borders book performance and signing. And so I do my little concert, and then people stand in line, and I, autograph and take pictures and this and that. This mom is waiting in line. She doesn't have a CD in her hand, and it gets her turn, and she just throws her arms around me and bursts into tears, hugging me. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay. She's like, I want to thank you so much. With our second child, we struggled with potty training. So it was so awful. Our first child, no problem. Second child, it just nothing worked. She goes, and your CD and the dance and the song and letting him hear it as a reward and doing the dance together, she's like, it probably saved my marriage, and it was an absolute blessing for our family. I can't thank you enough. And I'd have these experiences like that where parents would be like so profoundly moved and grateful because of the song, and I was like, holy diapers with that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Right?
Well, that is wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that, because I know that the thing that saved my marriage was we agreed to never do wallpaper again.
And that was my idea. Okay.
Yeah. So that's great.
So ironically, the potty dance turned out to be pretty neat.
Yeah. And of course, any of the listeners want to go look later, you can just go on YouTube and look up Huggy's potty dance, and you can see a 2-minute video, and it's really nicely done.
Video.
Yeah. You got kids dancing and you rocking out on your guitar.
Playing my 1958 Dan Electro U1 for those guitar aficionados out there.
Very nice. I don't know what that means other than guitar. I heard guitar. And now I'm going to transition here now to more or less kid-friendly content. So parents, we're 18, 19 minutes in. Now, this is the time to pause if you're so inclined, if you've enjoyed the stuff that we've done so far, because we're going to try to do this in about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. But that's the part where the kids stuff. Go buy the albums, right? You've got a new one.
RalphsWorld.com, yeah, or listen on, they're all available streaming.
Oh,
the album is called Time Machine Guitar.
Now, aren't you working on a show for that too?
We've been doing videos we've been putting up on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Ralph's World Video. Has a lot of the videos we've done with the Time Machine Guitar. I got some puppets that interact with me in my TV treehouse. And my Disney videos are available there. And lots of other fun, interesting videos.
That's right.
And then there's some other videos that aren't available there for commercial reasons, but that are available over at the Ralph's World Facebook page. So that's the other place folks can go to check out some pretty darn cool content.
Well, that is fantastic, because not only do you have a rock and roll history, you've got all these kids' albums. And by the way, listeners, in case you didn't know, you were actually nominated for a Grammy for one of these, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have very many Grammy-nominated artists on my show, by the way. So it's good fun that you're on.
I'm a legend in my own mind.
Yeah, that's right. It's just never take yourself too seriously. Now, I'm going to go back in the Wayback Machine, and we're going to go back to some of the old songs. And these have a special place for me because, of course, I watched some of the old videos I found, and boy, did you look young. I can only imagine how I looked. And I think the very first time my wife took me to a concert, right after Cheap Beer Night came out, whatever the place was happened to be serving drinks, like frozen drinks, and one of them happened to be pina coladas. And I got tired of going up and getting another pina colada, and so I asked them if they'd pour me a pitcher. So next thing I know, I end up drinking an entire pitcher of pina coladas and dancing like a mad fool at one of your songs. And so I'm going to play, a little musical history for you guys. A couple of songs from the Wayback Machine. Hope you enjoy these. Hang on a second.
I pulled into Memphis. I could not slow down. My brakes were gone, I wrecked the car, fire on the ground. And when my car exploded and the flames licked my chin, my life passed before my eyes like an X-rated film.
And since we missed the very beginning of that, that's Hey St. Peter.
Yep.
And if I recall correctly, it's a story, a song that kind of came to you as you were driving through Memphis. Does that ring a bell?
Well, the song came to me as I was doing some songwriting, and at that particular period of whatever, there were a bunch of songs about Memphis on the radio. John Hyatt had Memphis in the Meantime. I was at Walking in Memphis. Everybody was writing songs about Memphis, and so I wrote the first line of the song as kind of to pop the balloon of the whole, romanticizing Memphis thing. First line of the song is, I pulled into Memphis, I couldn't slow down, my brakes were gone, I wrecked the car. So I basically killed the narrator of the song in the first two lines. It's just a snarky joke.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of
snark. And then I realized that I'd written myself into a corner. And so then I'm like, okay, I just killed the narrator. What do I do now? So the rest of the song was just kind of a desperate attempt to write my way out of that predicament. And the narrator character ends up going to heaven, and it's a clerical error. St. Peter shows up and says, "Hey, wait, he's mine." And of course, in the chorus, the sings about all the things in hell that the guy wishes he was experiencing. Hey St. Peter, won't your gates to hear the devil calling.
Yeah. He tries to get.
So then,
go ahead.
The devil and St. Peter end up playing a game of over the guy's soul, and before the game of poker has been finished, and he knows which direction he's going. They apparently resuscitate him in the ambulance, and he's sucked back down to earth. And so he finishes the song saying he's breaking all 10 commandments to make sure he goes to hell.
Now, we've talked about this before a little bit, you and I in person, many years ago. Not as long as this, but something like, 6 years ago. You happened to do a concert in the courtyard in Chicago for a Catholic church. I mean, they own the entire city block, and if I recall, they had you there because they knew of some of your Ralph's World stuff, but apparently never made any conditions on what music you would play.
Well, one of the fathers was a big Bad Examples fan as well.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me before about how much he loved the stuff, and it was like. So and they didn't say don't do this or that, and I didn't think too much, apparently.
Well, I know I enjoyed it, and the young kids enjoyed it, the little kids, and there was some point, I don't know if it was halfway or 2/3 of the way through the night, you guys took a break, and apparently the guy who hired you left, and there was a new priest. Am I recalling this correctly?
It was, yeah.
and so the new priest was in shock and had no idea what to do with you guys. And so all he could think of was to go up on stage and say something like, I just want everyone to know that these songs don't represent the values of the Catholic Church. But then he let you continue with the rest of the night. And I'm thinking for the rest of my life, that is the epitome of impotent rage. He is boiling over inside, but there's nothing he can do because he's going to ruin the entire event if he stops you. And I think you may have even played that song right after just to kind of be you.
I probably did.
So I was like, wow, this is probably the most fun I've ever had at a Catholic event. So way better than bingo.
Funny, the last Bad Examples show, there was this older guy and this probably 5 kids in their 20s.
Yeah.
And he was like
I was
uncle
there.
of one of them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The thing, they were all at that concert. They were kids, and that was the first time they saw the Bad Examples, and following the band ever since.
I can just imagine, kind of being cloistered by your family and the religion, and you're 10 or 12, and the Bad Examples show up at your church.
Yeah.
Oh, what a wonderful story and a life-changing experience for them.
Yeah, they were so thrilled to share the story. They were there and how much it meant to them. It's great. You live for that. You really live to do that.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I haven't been to that many of your shows, but we've had some very fun overlap with those stories that I was there at both of those locations. I've got another one for you, and this is kind of another. This is the mood section where we're doing some of the hard rock and stuff. So I got another one here for you. We're going to listen to this.
Maybe we don't belong together. I won't tell if you won't worry. There's time enough for time to tell what's going on. I'm in no hurry. Don't look now, the sun is creeping. Another night without sleeping. It's not a perfect world, but it's still good to be alive. If you don't know by now, you'll probably never understand the way it feels you wanna live. One perfect moment.
Okay, and that of course is One Perfect Moment. And for the people who are listening, if you're anywhere near Chicagoland, of course, try to find the Bad Examples when they do a concert. You guys do them still occasionally, not as often, not 250 like you did in your first year. But every couple of months, I think. Do you know what's coming up next?
We have August 11th. We're going to be out of Batavia at the Music Matters Fest. August 16th, which I think is a Thursday, we're going to be up in Milwaukee at the Bayshore Town Center, playing an outdoor show, kind of a mall community area. And then September 8th, we're going to be at the Glen Ellen Backyard Barbecue with my daughter Fiona opening, and some great bands during the afternoon as well. It's a full-day barbecue contest with great food and great music.
And where can people find all this information and updates and the latest news? Is there like a Facebook page or something?
RalphCovert.com is a great one, or they can go to both the Bad Examples have a Facebook page, and there's a Ralph Covert Facebook page as well.
And I think this is the perfect time for me to mention that you also have a Patreon page. And we don't want to forget that, if you like Ralph's music and you like the Bad Examples, you can go to his page and see some bonus material and stuff, and you get to see even more bonus material if you sign up and become a patron. And you can start with a pathetic $1 a month. Is that?
Yeah, it's a real high bar.
And if you,
the Patreon has been a lot of fun. It's been a real chance to create a dialogue and share stuff that is a lot more expansive than can be done through most of the social media forums. I've been doing a podcast on it, not nearly as good or as robust as yours, but I've been working on that, sharing unreleased tracks, sharing stories. I've previewed some things from the new Ralph Covert album, Welcome to Deadsville. The patrons at patreon.com have gotten to share. So it's a really fun chance to throw open the vaults of the archives and have a richer, more fun experience.
Absolutely. Now, since you mentioned the new album, real quick, what's the release date on that?
The release date is August 10th, which is it's this year's palindrome date, which I think is totally awesome. 810-2018.
Very, very nice. So August 10th. So, go check that. Of course, there's the old albums that everyone can buy. And before we move on from One Perfect Moment, I think this was a perfect kind of segue to the Patreon page, because you have a post and you have the song One Perfect Moment, and you're talking about being live at Bub City. And you don't have to read or have everything that's in this post, but walk me through this story, this post that you put up, because every once in a while I hear you tell a story, I'm like, how in the hell does he remember this kind of detail from 20 plus years ago? But they're great stories, and it's something that stuck into your mind at the time. So walk me through Bub City. What is that?
Okay. Bub City was or is, I don't know if it's still around, but it was a bar, it was a restaurant, part of the Let Us Entertain You restaurant chain. And it was kind of a Southern food theme with the restaurant. And then they had this big bar area where they would have country music. And they'd even kind of built the stage to look like the one in the Blues Brothers with chicken wire on the side.
It literally had chicken wire.
It literally had chicken wire.
Can't even believe it.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when they opened, all these, local rock bands all these musicians were putting together fake country bands, because they would do like a week-long gig at Bub City. They'd hire you for a full week, and so it was like you'd set up and you'd get paid for a full week. It was a boondoggle for a lot of these bonus for these musicians. So when they called us in to do their audition night, they gave you a couple $100 to do it Tuesday or whatever. And we're like, sure, we'll take. We were working constantly, so any chance to work was fine. And didn't get a lot of Tuesday gigs in town. So we did it. We did not pretend to be a country band. We did not pander. We had no desire to be hired. We just went in and did what we did. And they loved it. And they to our shock, they hired us for a full week.
What are you going to do?
Okay.
Right? Okay, I'll take the money.
Yeah, I'll take the money. Sure. And Jay Whitehouse at our record label was like, well, guys, you got to do country, though, because they're hiring you. I'm like, well, we said, okay, we will do one country song per set. One. And this was so what we would do
3 for the night.
3 full sets. So we're playing like probably 3 to 4 hours of music. And at every set in the middle, we would walk to the back of the stage, and we had some cowboy hats. We'd put on our cowboy hats, come to the front, and do our one country song, which we did Rhinestone Cowboy. We did Tumblin' Tumbleweed. See them tumbling down, pledging their love to the ground. Lonely but free I'll be found, tumbling along with the tumbling tumbleweeds. We did that, and then we did the rodeo song. Remember that?
Yeah, you kind of had to, didn't you?
Well, it's 40 below, and I don't give a... Got a heater in the truck, and I'm off to the rodeo. Those elemental left and the elemental right. Come on, you don't get dressed up right.
I'm surprised you didn't do Rawhide, though.
Well, there's more swear words in the rodeo song.
So even then, you're pushing the edge, and this is going fine.
We're way over the edge.
And you're doing this
so we did it
on a regular basis.
Yeah, we did it 2-3 times, and, our fans loved it because there's a big, comfortable place, no cover charge because of the whole restaurant thing. And we're in town on weeknights, we're in town for more so, and people are telling their friends. Every time we play, more people come, and we're packing the joint. We're packing the joint. So, I think it might have been and we're there, and they'll hire us for a week the next month, and then a week the next month, and it's nicely augmenting our touring. It's like, great. And so maybe the end of one of the third week that we played there, Richard Melman, who owned the Let Us Entertainment chain, had heard about this band that was obviously making him a lot of money in beer sales. So he came to check us out. And the manager, I think, had mentioned something that he was going to be, that he was there. Something. We're like, oh, that's whatever. Doesn't bother us. So about halfway through the second set, the manager, or maybe one of the waiters brought up a note that said, "Dear band, play more country, Richard Melman." And I pulled the Sharpie out of my back pocket and wrote, "Dick, no, Ralph." had the waiter deliver it back to him.
Yeah.
Well, by the time we got done with our second set, the manager cornered me, and she was absolutely furious. Melman was apparently blown a gasket and was livid, and had chewed her out, and she was chewing me out, and she was yelling at me that they were canceling our engagement for the following month, and we'd never work. And he was furious that we would sew, I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So we went up on stage, and I opened the third set by telling the audience the story of what had just happened. And the manager comes over to the side of the stage, and she's like even more pissed, and she's like yelling at me through the chicken wire. Every time she starts to yell something, John Dewich, our guitar player, would slam a really loud chord on his guitar to drown her out. She's like, "You're Richard Melman. No, you guys are. You can't do that." And he's like, "I can't hear you."
Oh man! Well, maybe that is even a better example of impotent rage.
It was, oh boy, and then we get to the end, and the crowd nobody is left, and they're having so much fun. And we run over late, and
yeah, because what are you going to do? Get fired?
Yeah, exactly. So it's past 2:00 at this point. The soundboard is far back up, like overlooking it. You have to climb up this little ladder. The sound man's climbed down the ladder, pushed his way through the crowd, which is no easy matter, and comes up to the stage, and he leans in, he goes, "It's after 2, they're going to freaking kill me. He's like, you guys gotta quit. It's done. There's no encore. We're done." The crowd's like going, "Encore, encore." and I looked at him and I said, "Okay, that's fine. Why don't you turn off the PA?" He's like, "Okay." I said, "We'll play while you fight your way through the crowd and climb back up to your sound booth." He gives me a big wink and says, "I hope that's what you're going to say." He's like, you should have time to do 2 or 3 songs before I turn the PA off. But I had to tell you I was going to do it. So we did. There's a song of ours called "Battle Hymn of the Repugnant," and there's an acoustic version on the 2 Meter Session album, but it's a slamming in your face, raw kind of punk song. So I said to the crowd, I said, for the first and last time, they're telling us they're going to turn off the PA. So for the first and last time here at Bub City, I would like to ask all of you to slam dance.
Oh my!
And as I said in the Patreon post, you have to keep in mind these people were dressed more like they were on the in an episode of Friends.
Yeah.
Than punks. This was like the early '90s, and they were like, Breakfast Club. They were like wearing their little natty '90s outfits, and they went to town, and 6 people in Bub City slam dancing, just pogoing off each other, beer flying everywhere, tables, chairs toppled. The manager is absolutely apoplectic with rage.
And she can't get through the chicken wire, huh?
She can't get through the chicken wire.
Oh, that's.
And they're threatening us that they're going to sue us for damages. They're threatening us that they're going to withhold our check and not pay us. They're threatening us with all this stuff. They didn't do any of it. They paid us. We never came. The great thing was the staff and the bus boys and the wait staff came to see us for years.
Yeah.
Javier, the bus boy, brought his kids until they were I mean, till they outgrew. I mean, because for them, it was the only band ever. It was the only time anybody ever stood up to Richard Melman, and so for the staff of Bub City, it was like an Evita moment.
Yeah. That might have been the most expensive Sharpie note you ever wrote on a napkin or whatever.
I think it was.
Well, I've got another song for you from the Wayback Machine.
Nice.
I can see. Yes, I think I have the sound up. We're gonna play this, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
Excellent.
Well, I was born too late to play in the Rolling Stones. I don't know Jimmy Page, I never met Yoko Ono. Standing with a strap, I'm rock and roll's bastard son. Go out, get drunk, get laid, have fun. Don't got $1 million, don't drive a Cadillac. Give me half a chance, 'cause I'm not dead yet. Not dead yet. Not dead yet. I'm a mad dog fighting with the wall against my back. You better get a bigger gun, I'm not dead yet. I've been machine gun, handgun, hijack, lepo deck, dive bomb, napalm, nuclear warhead, and drop from a jet plane with no parachute. Shot by a firing squad and raped by a business suit.
And of course, if I recall correctly from the history, this song goes way back, doesn't it?
Yeah, this was off of our
Your
off
tape?
Meat, our very first album. It was cassette tape originally, which is a great story in that one. I hand duplicated the first batch. It was supposed to be like a demo just for getting bookings at clubs, and I had some odd length cassette tapes. I'm like, well, I could sell them. So we actually were selling cassettes at our first or second show. That's how important for me just merchandise, getting the music into people's hands was. And at our early shows, the album was called Meat because the photo on the cover, Greg, Terry, and I, the three guys in the band at the time, were naked with our private parts covered. I had a guitar in front of me, and Terry had a magazine like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pun off of the first Beatles album, Meet the Beatles. Only ours was M-E-A-T, Meet. Bad examples. And then with every one of the cassettes that I would sell it in those early days, and this was 1987. So this was the very early days of the AIDS crisis, very early in the safe sex era. And the only place you could get condoms was at the drugstore. But what I did was I taped a condom to every cassette tape, kind of as a marketing thing to get people's attention and kind of a shock value at the shows. I used to say, beginning of the night, I'd be selling a cassette tape with a condom attached. By the end of the night, I'd be selling a condom with a cassette tape attached. So either way, it got the job done.
It reminds me, totally unrelated to you, but several years ago, I helped the students at the University of Illinois do a thing on the quad, the big center of grass in the University of Illinois. And they were giving out condoms, and it just happened to be a very special day of the year. And the theme that they had was Have a Good Friday Night, because it was Good Friday. So,
nice.
Yeah. Just got to be a rebel sometimes.
So Not Dead Yet was on the Meat cassette. And then we had started working on the Bad is Beautiful album. The one thing I learned from Meat, because it was a club demo. There was 13 hours total in the studio for the whole thing.
Wow.
Tracking, overdubs, mixing. I mean, it was a quickie, and I assumed we'd sell a few copies and then move on from there. I sold out my first batch. People wanted more. I made another batch. I sold those out. I made more. I sold those out, and at some point we've passed 500 sales. I did a big deal at our show where I was announcing we were approaching going cardboard.
Right.
As opposed to a gold record.
Yeah.
We're going to be a cardboard, and a fan made a cardboard thing cut out of a cassette tape, and we went cardboard. But the thing I learned from that was that if you make music and people like it, it's going to stick around. So I really went with the follow-up to get it right and to take whatever time it took to figure the roadmap of making an album. so that I knew how to do that process. And that's what we set about doing with Bad is Beautiful. It took us a couple years to make it. We put only our own money into it. Goldmine magazine at one point in the 90s listed it as one of the top 50 pop albums in history. So I think we did okay with the recording of it.
Yeah.
But Not Dead Yet was not planned to be on that album because it had already been released. Right, the song was done.
Yeah,
it was on Meat. I was sitting in my apartment in Bucktown one night, and my phone rang. Back when you had phones on the wall.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Free cell phone. Yeah, right. My phone rings in my apartment, and there's this guy says, "Hey, is this Ralph?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "This is Dennis DeYoung from STYX." "No, I'm not pranking you. This is actually Dennis DeYoung from STYX." I'm like, "Yeah, right. Who is it?" He's like,
"Sure.
Dennis DeYoung from STYX." I said, "Okay. Why are you calling me Dennis DeYoung from STYX?" Well, it turns out a mutual fan, had given him a copy of the Meat album. He put it on, fallen in love with the song Not Dead Yet, and was interested in was curious if I would. He wanted STYX to record it, and was I okay with that?
Wow.
And I could add up publishing money. I was like, of course.
Yeah.
He said, well, would you be willing to? I'm kind of old fashioned. I'd love to. You did this great song. I'd love to meet you. Would you come down to my house and we can kind of just get acquainted?
And this was in the early,
like probably 89 or 90.
Okay, so by then they'd already had the 3 triple platinum albums, and the house was probably pretty good house.
Yeah. They were. Yeah. At that point they'd sold more records than the Beatles.
Yeah.
So I went down to Dennis DeYoung's house and we spent an evening hanging out. What I didn't realize until years later was that he was auditioning me to join STYX.
Ah.
I didn't, because he's trying to, and I never was a huge STYX. They were not an influential band. I liked some things of theirs, but I was not. It wasn't my bag.
Wasn't your thing.
So it wasn't my thing. So he'd be saying to me, our stuff is our stuff really is very similar, and I'd be like, no, it's not.
No, it's not. Well, no. Interview over.
He's like, oh no, it is. Actually, he did this. I wish I had this. It's in my memory. So he says, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So there's a song off of the Meat album called Over My Shoulder. Do you know that song?
Yeah.
It's like a piano ballad. I wait by my pillow, your footsteps echoing up to my door. Piano ballad in the key of C. So we go over to his white grand piano that he has in his living room, of course. We sit down at his white grand piano, and he starts playing Over My Shoulder. I mean, he knows the song by heart.
Right.
It's Dennis DeYoung singing Over My Shoulder. But he plays it as if it's Come Sail Away.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does it sound like it's on a Harman Kardon keyboard or something?
No, by the end of it, he's doing the chorus, but with that Come Sail Away kind of climax thing. So it's a live mashup by Dennis DeYoung.
Wow.
Of my song Over My Shoulder and his song Come Sail Away, which my younger sister Cheryl probably played on our piano at home over 2,000 times.
Yeah, I don't blame her. That was actually one of my most favoriteest songs ever. That and Foreplay Long Time by Boston.
Yeah.
And I love...
Yeah, that was a great song.
Yeah, and I love songs that have a change in tempo. Or like a lot of yours have stories to tell. And so, in a way, he's got a point because you're both storytellers. And even though my normal business is investments, I tell people mostly what I do is I tell stories, and people want to hear more stories, and then some of them end up hiring me. It's kind of a weird thing, but that's one of the things that I love about the music. And I'm going to use this moment to segue into another album, Eat It Godot's, right? It's acoustic.
Eat It Godot's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've got a couple there, and a couple of my favorites. So I'm just going to play, what Phil likes, and you're just going to listen. It's kind of
I will say, let me just interrupt for 1 second to kind of to close out that I think Dennis probably was more right than I was. So it was kind of snarky on me, and certainly I've gotten to know a bunch of the STYX guys, Dennis and JY, since, and they have been nothing but the kindest, most supportive. They're great guys. They're really true blue Chicago type guys, and I have the deepest affection for them. They actually, my music publisher is somebody that they hooked me up with after when they covered Not Dead Yet, and so I didn't realize I was being auditioned. I was young. I had my vision of what I wanted to do in mind, but they have treated me so well through the years, and I have very fond memories of all of my dealings with them. Never had a bad moment with any of them.
I've always loved the music, and I'm so delighted to hear that they're so wonderful. And I've seen what's left of the band in person in the last few years, and they're still doing their thing. So I love that. So we're gonna take a breath. We're gonna
move on to Eat It Godot's.
Yeah, we're gonna go to acoustic. So it's a big switch. And I'm just going to play this one, and then maybe you can talk about it a little bit after the sample is over. You ready?
Sure, yeah.
Let me check the music. Oh, see, I keep forgetting to turn this up. So hang on. We're going to turn this up because it starts kind of quiet. So you'll know this, of course, right away.
Okay.
Lit a cigarette and smiled. Alone in the kitchen. It's all been more trouble than it's worth for Adam McCarthy. Made a long distance call, talked for an hour, dying at 33. Adam McCarthy. And what about growing old, getting drunk, getting mad at your lover? What about making time for yourself? What have I done to deserve watching a friend waste away? And what about waking up, feeling good, acting like you're immortal? What about having a moment to lose?
All right, we're gonna, even though it almost makes me tear up just listening to it. Walk me through that song and what it means to you.
Well, the came from a couple different places. One was a fellow named Bruce Howell. He was actually the graphic artist who designed the Richard Nixon T-shirt and the Cheap Beer Night CD booklet. And when he was finishing up the record, and I had a copy of I was touring, that example of touring quite a bit at that point. And I had a copy of the CD booklet that I wanted to show him because it was finally done. And I was calling him when I was coming through town, and he was never answering my calls. And finally, his girlfriend answered, and she said, "Well, okay. I mean, I guess it's okay if you want to come by to see him." I'm like,
"Okay.
Huh? What?" So I stopped by, and he was sitting in a hospital dress in a hospital bed in the middle of his living room. He'd gone to the doctor, and they found a grapefruit-sized tumor under his arm from skin cancer. And so some of the details in the song I very much took from, the the long distance call was him standing in the kitchen in his hospital dress, talking to somebody, and he actually said the line, do you want to get high? It's not like it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there just kind of smoking cigarettes the whole time.
Yeah, well,
as he's
why not?
There, why not, right? But it was, but the experience had happened. I didn't write the song about it. It was just a really intense experience. And I said I'd come back and see him, and I chickened out. I couldn't. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was touring a lot, so I didn't have a lot of time in town. And then I was gone. Then I was back. And when you're off, you have just a couple of days to get your shit together as you come through town. It was very easy to have other stuff to do. So the fact was, I was a chicken.
Yeah, and that comes through in the end of the song. I didn't play the whole thing, of course, but
yeah.
This song, like many of the songs, especially from the go ahead, finish your.
I was going to say the other half of the song getting written was a couple of years after that. I was in an improv acting class, and we were working on improvised monologues, and everyone was trying to. I had some general ideas. I was going to do something funny. I had some kind of a thing I was going to kind of riff with, and every single other person in the acting class, when they went up to do their improvised monologue, they were doing something funny, and the more of them I watched, I was just like, screw that. That's not. There's no risk in that. And I remember the thing people always say, when you're acting, you should try to go to a place that you're as uncomfortable as possible. And I was just sitting there kind of ruminating on that, going, wow, oh God, well, what? Okay, so I'm gay, I'm dying of AIDS, I haven't told anybody yet. That would be a pretty intense place to be in. And I was kind of zoning off, and the teacher goes, "Hey, Ralph, do you want to do the next monologue?" I'm like, and at that point, that was in my head. I stood up and I just said, I suppose I should do a monologue, but I really can't. And I said, I'm just really, really pissed because it's not fucking fair. And I haven't really talked about this, but I mean, one night with this guy, and I didn't use protection, and just one night, and now I'm going to die. And I just kind of went from there and just poured my guts out of what if I was in that place, and just acted, right. And I finished the monologue, and there's this long silence, and the teacher says, I think we need a smoke break. And so calls a break to the class, and we go outside, and one girl's crying, and somebody else comes up and gives me a hug, and the teacher's like, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell us?" I mean, I'm like, "Guys, it's a monologue. It's an improvised monologue."
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, doing it, I had gone so far to the other side of the experience that for the first time, I was actually able to see my visit with Bruce from Bruce's eyes.
Right.
Right? And I went home after the acting class, and I picked up my guitar, and I started the song. There was no song. There was not a note. There was not a lyric. There was nothing. And I picked up the guitar, and probably 10 minutes later, the song was completed, except for one exception that I'll give you in a second. The song was finished. And one of the things I teach my songwriting students when I would teach is there's a thing I call the songwriter Fifth Amendment. And part of that is you don't have to betray your sources of a song, but you don't have to say what it's about. And you also, if you don't want to play it, you don't have to. Some songs are too personal, and that's okay. You can have a song that you write that you never play. And I never had a desire to play Adam McCarthy, the song. And I was like, that's cool. It's just too raw. That's fine. And I was on the road. The band had a show in New Mexico. We'd flown home to play a concert at the Vic. And then I flew back solo to drive our rig from Santa Fe up to Colorado, where our next show was. So I was driving alone, and the guys were going to fly in and meet me. And I'm driving, and I'm just kind of, the Adam McCarthy song is rattling through my head. And I got to the last line of the last verse that you referenced earlier. And the original line of the song was, I said I'd come back when I could, but he died in the morning. And I'm driving down the road, kind of just singing the song, rattling the song in my head. And I got to that line, and I realized it was a lie.
Yeah.
I got to the song, to that line, and I realized that the truth was, what the lyric is now, I said I'd come back when I could, but I never did make it. And as soon as I changed that one line, I had to pull over to the side of the road because I started uncontrollably weeping, because I, both from grief from multiple levels and
some exhaustion,
the relief, exhaustion, and the relief from letting go of the lie.
Yeah,
and then.
Go ahead.
I'll give you one last piece of the story. I'm cutting you off left and right.
No, it's beautiful stuff.
That recording that's on Anita Godot's, it's on the European version of Anita Godot's. Where that came from, Steve Gerlach and I were heading into, I think, WGN Radio. I think it was the Ian Punnett show, to do this radio interview. And I had the idea to do that song. I'd never really, this must have been maybe shortly after I had fixed that line. And I said to Steve, I'd like to do this song. He's like, okay, show it to me. So on the way in, driving on the Kennedy, I think our sound man was driving, and it was me and Steve in the motorhome. I played him the song for the first time, driving to the radio station. And Steve's is a good enough musician, has a good enough ear, and is an intuitive enough player that performance of it on the album is one that was done live on the radio. And Steve, who plays the beautiful counter melody guitar lines on it, he'd heard the song less than a half hour before he played that.
Wow.
He kind of played it once sitting in traffic on the Kennedy.
Which one can do.
And then, we went up to the station and did that performance live on the air, and fortunately they recorded it.
Wow. Now, I do want to jump in real quick. We are over an hour. I'm in no hurry, but I don't want to abuse your time. I have several more songs, and I want to talk about the new album, but we can kind of skip forward if you...
No, let's roll with it.
Okay.
I mean, if anybody still listening after an hour, they'd be mad if we cut it short.
Well,
and then we would scare the rest of them away. So
I do. My intention for most shows is to be under an hour, but they usually end up being 70 to 90 minutes. And I kind of was afraid or hopeful, I guess, that we would go long, and that's why I've committed that this would just be the show. I might have to clean up a little bit of the gaps for the music, but it's going to go kind of like it is unless you want to change something.
Works for me.
So I'm going to go to another song off that album and just play a little sample. And unfortunately, because, and this is some of the stuff I talk about, that song and this next song, the imagery, and where I can close my eyes and I can see what you're painting with words. And I don't get that from a lot of songs. So that's one of the things that I really cherish in your music. And this is one of my favorites from way back. And so I just had to put it in here. And it's a very, very different feel. But we'll give this a shot, and maybe we can talk about that for a few minutes.
I look forward to it.
Of course, I really like later on in the song, there's a whole nother story sequence where the character, the narrator, as you called him, of the story, decides to end his life and writes a note and just ends up going, a beer and shot tavern, picking up a girl and brings her home, doesn't really want to, but doesn't know what else to do.
Yeah, grinding her ashtray lips on the sofa.
Yeah, as I crumpled up my note behind my own back, and
yeah,
I can see that. I mean, it's like
I felt so good, I forgot I felt.
Yeah, and it just that's so real, and I don't think I'm different than most people. That there's times where you just don't feel right, you don't know what you're doing, and you're going through life and just doing things that you do. And you don't necessarily know why, and that's the beauty of that song, and it really made a connection for me from a storyteller's perspective.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I love that song, and I love the whole harmonic structure and music of it is the song pulls from so many disparate elements in a way. I mean,
yeah. Now, you also happen to teach music, right? You're a music teacher and songwriter teacher. What?
Yeah, I've taught. I teach from time to time. I teach songwriting. I did a TED Talk on songwriting, and I've got some videos we're going to be putting up on YouTube about some of my songwriting techniques. But teaching songwriting was real interesting and powerful for me because I'd been doing it intuitively, and in order to teach it, I had to understand, put labels and organize what I was doing, such that I could impart the information.
Yeah.
And so for me, teaching songwriting was really helped me codify and understand what I do. I guess, I put handles on the pots.
Yeah.
The pots were there, but having the handles, they were so much easier to use. and didn't burn my hand as much. And then teaching the songwriting classes, I taught at the Old Town School for years. And doing that, I even taught the songwriting class there after I'd quit doing the Wiggle Worms classes because of touring considerations. And I occasionally do the classes still I'll do it either out of Water Dog Studios in the Loop or out of my house. But it's for me, at the core of what I do, I think one of the purest parts of what I love is songwriting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the purest essence of what I do.
And again, my wife and I were lucky enough to see you at the TEDx Naperville, where you gave your song teaching topics, tips, things, whatever, in 17 minutes, with the help of the audience and random shout outs and things written on note cards. Us collectively, 500 people, came up with a song there on the spot. And the crowd really enjoyed that. It's something different. And that whole thing, that whole TEDx Naperville, I was so impressed. And I'm fantasizing that I've got an idea for a talk, and I got to submit it to them soon, that I might be able to give a talk that'd be great. This fall. Yeah. But I want to segue into the new album. Again, we said August 10th it comes out. So this show is going to be really close to right before then. So everybody gets all excited and wants to go buy the new album. And of course, if you go buy 4 or 5 albums, you won't object to that, right?
No.
Well, the new album. The new album is called. Is this official now? Is it?
Yeah.
Welcome to Deadsville.
Welcome to Deadsville.
Deadsville. Walk us through the concept, and are you trying to say a specific thing with this album, or is it just kind of songs thrown together?
No, it's there's definitely a concept with it, and in a way, it kind of touches on the same things you pulled out of My Element, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I had the idea that people use the phrase, I was in a dark place, or it happened when I was in a bad place, as a phrase to mean, when their life's not going well, or they've got some depression or negative things happening. And the idea struck me that, wow, what if that was really a place? And then my kind of twisted, sarcastic comic mind immediately leaped to, and it was a vacation destination, a tourist site.
Right.
And so I kind of imagined this, this colorful and superficially wonderful place called Deadsville that's not any of those things. And that it's, it kind of, in a satirical way, imagining the experience of someone going to a vacation in Deadsville, but what it is they're kind of, they're going to a dark place.
Right.
It's a vacation from their life, but it's not a good vacation. I think our society does a terrible job of addressing a lot of these issues, like depression or suicide or intense negative emotions. In fact, they call them negative emotions.
Right.
Emotions like anger, grief, sadness, fear. We're really taught to kind of repress and push those emotions down, and I do it as much as anybody. I'm not like some new age savant here. And I've, like all of us, I've gone through some great periods and some dark periods in my life. And some of the songs of some of the harder experiences I've gone through, sort of crystallizing in this record and coming around, and then the Welcome to Deadsville song all of a sudden brought into focus which songs I wanted to put on this album, and I kind of envisioned it as a journey to Deadsville, a journey into this dark place, and then back out again. And it's not a morose album. The goal was there's hopefulness and there's light in it, but there's also really facing these issues head on and trying to start a conversation. One of the songs on the record, I don't know if it's one that you're going to play or not, is there's a song called Blood on My Hands. There was a period when the Ralph's World thing took off, it got massive. And, playing every weekend somewhere, touring constantly, playing to thousands of people all the time. And the arc was it was at its peak when the economy tanked.
Right.
And it stayed airborne, if I can use an airplane metaphor.
Delicately.
Well, it stayed airborne because of its momentum, despite the fact that the bottom had dropped out of the economy and people just weren't spending money on stuff. They weren't. And then, but by a couple of years after, when the economy was continuing to be bad, it completely caught up to the Ralph's World thing, and turned a corner one year, and all of a sudden there were no gigs to be found. And all of a sudden, I'd gone from playing to thousands of people to kind of sitting at home, wondering what I was supposed to be doing. And I'm not the kind of person that values my life on how busy I am or how successful I am or how many people are loving me. But it's, being unemployed, which I guess I was, right?
Right.
Being unemployed and not knowing what you're supposed to do about it is a horrifying feeling.
Yeah, it is.
And so the phrase "blood on my hands" was, there's a line in the song, this extra time feels like blood on my hands. You'd think I had all this time, and finally, after all this, before I was so busy, I could never do all the music stuff I wanted to do, right? Wow, this should be heaven on earth. I've got all the time in the world. And it hurt. It was so confusing and terrifying, and it was horrible.
Well, I can relate to that because I know, especially when my kids were younger and lived at home, there'd be times where my wife and the kids would leave, and I'm like, finally, everybody's gone. I can do anything I want. But then it's so silent that you can't focus. You can't do anything. So it was interesting because I got the album only today, as you know, because you sent it to me. Thank you for the advanced copy. And what I tried to do, and I didn't know for sure if this was going to be the case, but I kind of had some reasons to think this was thematic. I was really concerned about listening to them in order because the older albums, a lot of the music I knew from shows, and it was a song here, a song there. And, if there's a real big theme for the album, I missed it because I just already knew the songs. So this one, from the beginning to end, I just sat through all of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I could tell exactly what you're talking about, kind of how it builds, and maybe that's why 2 of the 3 songs I picked are from the end.
Oh, cool.
Because it was kind of a little more uplifting, but I definitely wanted to include a segment from the title track, and I'll go over why I picked this, and I think you'll find it neat that I picked. Okay. And this is one of the ones I didn't start at the beginning. And it's a longer thematic song as well itself. But let's just play that, and then we can talk about what we heard. You okay with that?
I'd love that.
Okay, great. Hang on.
You may try chasing vacationers in case they'll lead you home, but they really don't know. They're stuck here in Deadsville. Welcome to no
here. Now, the reason I had to play that part of that song is
Sure.
that had a certain vibe, and I don't know if you were going to this. It sounded like something a different artist would do.
Okay.
And you've actually mentioned this other artist as someone that inspired you early in your career. That could have been a track on Sgt. Pepper's.
Wow.
That I was listening to that, and I thought for a moment that something weird had happened to my computer, and I was like, what is this? And I said I listened to it in order, but I listened to that song twice. But it was amazing, and again, it had that wistful, hopeful, but yet melancholy mixed in, and the lyrics and the way they danced and the music and the sounds. And I was like, were you tripping acid and listening to, Saturday, that album before you recorded the song? Because that was the feel I got. I don't know if you meant that or it just kind of happens.
That just kind of happened. It was not a deliberate of mine. Sgt. Pepper's was the album that awoke my heart and brain to rock and roll.
Yeah.
I had a summer camp counselor who played side one of Sgt. Pepper's constantly for the 2 or 3 weeks of summer camp.
Wow.
And although it's funny, they played side one of Sgt. Pepper's and the Beach Boys' Little Old Lady from Pasadena, the 45. But that's all he played, side one of Sgt. Pepper's and Little Old Lady from Pasadena. And when I got home from camp, I first thing I did was go buy the album, and it took me years to figure out. I was disappointed because, the album didn't have all the songs.
Oh, it took me a minute to catch up there.
Little Old Lady from Pasadena was one of the songs.
Oh, wow. It's one of those funny things that for me, the Beatles, I mean, I was born in 1967, so we're a very similar age, I think. I knew the Beatles a little bit, and that was, before my time, and it wasn't the current hip music, when I was growing up in the late 70s and early 80s. But I think my fondness for the Beatles has only increased with age. And just the other day, I watched Carpool Karaoke.
Oh, boy, right?
With Paul McCartney, and I almost wept through the whole thing because it's just like all those songs held so much memory. And I wasn't even a teenager then. I could only imagine what it would be like to be 18.
Oh, I know.
When Sgt. Pepper's comes out. Oh,
right.
What an amazing life-changing event that would be.
Yeah. I was all after the effect for me. Obviously, I heard it for the first time in the 70s. But yeah, I agree. And so I wasn't specifically channeling it, but I can't not. It's in my DNA, I guess. Yeah. That middle section, I kind of envision the kind of this used car salesman, maitre d', hotel greeter.
I was almost going to say Hotel California, but I didn't want to do that too.
Yeah. Except different, because that story, it's he stumbles upon it. This one, you're going there on a vacation.
Right.
And I see this guy kind of extolling, that's that middle section. He's like telling how wonderful it is. Kind of like, it's almost like Willy Wonka, just telling how wonderful it is. But everything he's saying is, as you pointed out, so...
Yeah, it's topsy-turvy, whimsical.
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, because it's psychedelic and that goes with the whole concept that the other thing that I got out of the album, maybe this is not fair for me to make it up, is that
you're nailing it so far.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you want to go to escape, so you go to this wonderland, and it turns out that it's not a wonderland, and it also turns out you never left, and all of your problems are with you and where you are, and you can't escape them, and you have to deal with it.
You can't escape until you deal with the problems.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's the whole, and that's what Deadsville is in life. however, and for different people, Deadsville is different things, right? It might be alcohol or substance abuse for some people. It might be repressing emotions and not dealing with it. It might be destroying your relationship or marriage instead of fixing it. It may be, suicidal thoughts or suicide or depression. And there's lots of ways that Deadsville, people go to Deadsville, that it manifests itself.
Yeah.
And again, part of what I wanted to do with this album was, open a dialogue about that, have a conversation that, as you say, that you don't leave Deadsville until you don't leave that dark place until you actually roll up your sleeves and are able to work through and confront whatever it is that you're not dealing with.
Yeah, you just got to own it.
You got to own it, and it's the one line that I love in that song is, "Are you renting or buying here in Deadsville?"
Hopefully,
throwaway line at the end of the song.
Renting. Another song here for you. I'm just going to throw it at you, so take a listen and then walk us through it on the backside.
Sure.
Did the dishes, got the kids to school, had a cup of coffee, 'cause I'm too exhausted not to, and I should be working. Instead I wrote this note for you. Oh, you make me happy. Yes, you do.
All right, I'm going to fade out before the second verse starts there, but you make me happy. Walk me through.
You can be in a dark place. You can have life going on, and life can be all the things it is. And, it's the simple things. And in that case, when I wrote the song for Rita, I was, it was kind of in the early stages of that period where things were just, were rough. And, loving the person you're with and, taking pleasure or life is doing the dishes and doing the laundry and all those things happen. And there's joy in that, in being alive doing that. There's a line in the bridge of that song, things are tougher than they've been, changes in the neighborhood, foreclosures in the neighborhood and changes in the wind, and all the good things seem bound to end. But you make me happy.
Yeah.
I think that's when people are, when I've been in painful places in life, it's important to, you need to feel those things, and that's part of how you get through it. But you also need to give yourself permission to feel the good things and own that as well.
Well, I have a third song from the album. I'm going to play a sample, and then we'll talk about it. And then I'll tell you in advance what I want to play for our exit song. We'll talk about that, and I'll play a little bit of that for the listeners to end the show. But before that, here's another one from Welcome to Deadsville. And everyone, I hope you enjoy this.
And it's your destiny that you will be a star. Though all the while you know it's a deception, but you pay the price, you give it all, and you fly high knowing that it's certain you will fall. Though you tell yourself that you are the exception, while Nirvana and the Beatles and Madonna take a bow, and the guitars in the bars are gently weeping. The winners and the wannabes are ghostly as their MP3s. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. Here's what I mean.
Who is Alex Chilton?
And what's he doing on this song?
Yeah.
Alex Chilton was first came to fame. He's a singer and songwriter, guitar player. First was known. He was in the group. He was the lead singer for the group, the Box Tops. They had that oldies hit, "My baby done wrote me a letter, said she couldn't leave without me no more." Remember that old song?
I do. I remember the Box Tops. I think I have a mini MP3 from the Box Tops. When those first came out, I don't know if you remember like the little 3-inch ones.
Uh-huh.
I bought every one I can get my hands on, and I've got something like 60 3-inch MP CDs. And
wow.
I had a Box Tops and like Four Seasons and all these oldies ones that came out.
Oh, neat. Okay, so Alex Chilton was the lead singer of the Box Tops. And he was like 17 when that song was a hit. And a couple of years later, the Box Tops had gone, it ended, and he was back in Memphis. And Memphis, Tennessee. Took guitar lessons from Steve Cropper from Booker T and the MGs, and put together a band called Big Star with a couple other fellas, and they recorded a record working after midnight at Ardent Studios in Memphis, and released the record and on a label, and it did nothing. It flopped. And they made another record, and it flopped. And kind of there they went into the dustbins of history. Now, back in the day before streaming and MP3s and digital music, the only way you could listen to or discover music would be to find a copy or own a copy of a physical record.
Right.
So you might read a review and track it down or order it, but something like those the Big Star albums, because they'd flopped, there weren't that many copies out there, and they didn't get any reviews. Nobody knew about them. Now, back in the day, it was you'd always be going to use record stores and flipping through and trying to discover stuff that you hadn't heard before. And one of the real joys of record collecting and music buying back in those days was taking something that you'd never heard of before, bringing it home, putting it on your turntable just based on maybe what you read in the liner notes and the album cover and just a hunch, and discovering something new and magical. And both of the Big Star records are just beautiful. They're wonderful records and great songwriting and just really poignant songs. And people started kind of stumbling upon this band that no one had ever heard of. The song itself is kind of about the rock and roll myth that, you fall in love with music, you put a band together, and stardom awaits. And as we know, stardom rarely awaits. And even in a case like mine, where I'm a one percenter, I suppose, in the music industry, I can, I'm not rich. I'm the poorest person in my neighborhood, and I do it because I love it, and I do it because it makes people's lives better, and I can't not do it. But we're talking about Paul McCartney. I'm not Paul McCartney. As far as that level of, that's
it's a whole other thing.
A whole other thing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm below me are people that are as far below me as Paul McCartney is above me, right? So the kind of the rock and roll dream, you become Paul McCartney, and the kind of the fear, I guess maybe, is you make great music and nobody notices.
Right.
That's the unspoken archetypical fear, I think. And as Alex Chilton and as Big Star began to be kind of passed around as became this cult thing where people became, do you know Big Star? You know, like you want to turn people out of the cool thing that nobody else can find. And there are a number of artists and groups like that. Big Star, Alex Chilton almost became a shorthand icon for that idea. The Replacements even did a song called Alex Chilton where they name-checked him because Paul Westerberg was one of these people that just fell in love with the Big Star records. Alex Chilton, I know somebody who dated him, and she said he absolutely hated that he had been made the poster boy for underappreciated artists.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, poetic. Right? Yeah, it
rubbed it. Go on, double-edged sword.
Well, I could see where he's coming from. It's like, God damn it, why couldn't they just sell the albums when I put them out? I could have been a star again. I'm famous for being a failure. Yeah.
Oh, well, lucky me.
Yeah, I don't see him as being famous for being a failure. I think maybe if he's interpreting it that way, I could see he'd be more upset. But I think
that's how he took it.
Yeah,
from what I heard.
I see it as the world wasn't ready for the beauty that you created. It's just like a painter who becomes famous after they die, and you're like, why couldn't I have sold paintings for millions of dollars when I was alive and enjoyed some money along with my art? But sometimes that happens.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. So the song, that's what the song is kind of. Amen. Alex Chilton is sleeping. I mean, he's no longer with us. At least he's at peace.
Yeah.
The song is about kind of having that love and passion for making music, and yet knowing it's a
rough gig. It's a rough gig.
Well, and knowing it's a false dream.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's
and then so that's kind of that seems like it's one element of Deadsville.
Yeah. And I mean, boy, I think I read more optimism into it, but that's okay. You know.
Well, I think it's about the love of music.
Yeah. Because that's kind of what I saw is that do what you love, let the world be damned, get by, feed yourself, and eventually someone may come around and realize how good it was.
Well, and that's certainly my philosophy of life in music is for whatever good or bad, I don't care. I'm not chasing any trend. I'm making the music that I damn well want to make, and as you say, I'm making it because I can and I want to and I will. And I'm trying to say with this album, I'm trying to start a conversation that I think is important and powerful and that comes from my heart. And with songs like Amen, Alex Chilton is Sleeping, like there's a line in the bridge, even when the bridge is, they'll tell you to quit, but you never will. Even when your amp is silent, there's music you can feel.
Yeah.
It's about that, just that. So I do think you're correct in calling it hopeful. Maybe I oversold the.
That's okay. I understand.
Heartbreak.
Well, the beautiful thing is it's nuanced. It's not necessarily one way. I mean,
yeah.
It's. I do want to wrap up because we're about an hour and 40 plus, which is getting on the long side even for me. And I'll wait to see the emails because sometimes when I do a show that's a little different like this, I'll get people going, "What is this? This is not your show." But I have to point out to them, by the way, it is the Phil Ferguson show. So Phil does whatever the fuck Phil wants to do, and this is what I wanted to do. So that's why we're doing this. The last one is kind of a closing song, and so I'll give you a heads up in advance, and you can talk about it a minute or two if you want, and then we'll just play that to go out. And that's a Pocket Full of Change.
Oh yeah.
How's that for a closing song?
That's a great one. Pocket Full of Change is off the Accidental soundtrack album. It's Steve Gerlach, Mike Hardigan, and myself playing live at Waterdog. The song itself, I actually wrote driving into Nashville, taught it to the guys in the band, and we sang it the first night in Nashville. It's a song about life, a song about, the song says it all. I'm going to die somewhere. I'm going to die someday. And when I go, I'm going to leave some songs and some love of life. And, if you think of me, I hope you think of me hope it gives you some happy memories.
Yeah, it really freakishly ties into the stuff we were talking about. I'm kind of scared at how well this all mapped out.
Yeah, I don't. I am comfortable with my own mortality. I'm a person that when I was 12, 13 years old, I'd sneak out the window and sit on the roof of my parents' house, usually naked, and stare up at the stars and just think of how big the universe was and how tiny I was, and the fact that I was insignificant and that I was going to die someday.
Right.
And that was okay. That's what it was. And the song kind of embraces that and says, you know what? There's only one. I'm going to die, and I'm every day that I'm alive, I just am so grateful. Good days, bad days, even in Deadsville.
Yeah.
I mean, the sun is beautiful in Deadsville. When the sunset goes across the waves on the beach, even if you're in complete agony and confused, it's breathtakingly beautiful. And life is like that. And that's the thing about life is, anger and sadness and grief are not negative emotions. They're part of the story. And I am just grateful to get to share music and share the ideas with folks. And I'm honored anytime that my music touches and connects with people, and that's a blessing.
Sure. Well, before I play this song on our way out, of course, thank you for spending so much time on the show. And listeners, once again, Ralph Covert, Covert, also Ralph Covert and the Bad Examples, and Ralph's World Music. He's on Patreon. You can go help him out and help fund him to be able to get another loaf of bread so that he can make another album. If you have kids or know someone that does.
On Patreon, there's a neat thing that folks will be interested in. You played the Welcome to Deadsville song?
Yeah.
We did a little video that's on the Patreon site where we actually kind of peeled the curtain back and showed how we kind of created some of the I talk about putting the song together, writing it, and then some of the studio things we did to create all those wonderful lush sounds. So there's a video about the Welcome to Deadsville song on the site, and it's got a recording of it as well. So even though the album's not out yet, people can go to the Patreon site and look in one of the videos. There's a video there of Welcome to Deadsville.
Well, I'm going to have to check that out after I get this all mixed, and I won't have to do much mixing. Like I said, I'll tweak up the little breaks that won't even know about them. But once again, thanks for coming on the show. Everyone go buy some of his music, and I'm going to just start this and then hang up on you. But I do appreciate you taking all this time, and thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate you taking the time, Phil. It really means a lot. It means something that it matters, and thank you. I'm honored and grateful that I've been able to have my music be part of the soundtrack of your life.
Well, thank you, and hopefully we'll run into you soon.
I look forward to it.
All right, bye-bye.
I live one man's life.
Goodbye.